That sounds good. All right, we're recording. So
Yep.
it's 7:01. We can call the first official meeting of the Education Options Committee to order. For the recording purposes, I don't know if they can see who's here. I'll just read off the list of names of people who are here. Myself, Richard Degon, Crystal McAllister, Thomas Doust, Linda Ellis, Tom Speck, Becky O'Day. Is that how you say your last name?
Yes.
Bobby French, Melissa, you don't have a last name listed, and Timothy Haley. I think everyone is already a committee member. Excuse me, I just need to turn on my charger before my battery dies. I think everyone is a committee member except for Bobby French, who has interest in joining the committee, and Timothy Haley. And I see Buzz 2978. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's a Buzzle. And also not on the committee, but welcome. I talked to Thomas Doust. We have two Thomases here, spelled the same way, before the meeting. And we talked about a couple things that we thought we could maybe talk about, but it might be a good idea to just kind of go around and say hello to everybody. I don't know anyone. I've only been in town a couple of years here. Looks like we have a Carrie Russo joining. So it would be helpful for me. And I don't know, maybe others, but maybe not. But I'll start. I'm Rick Degon. I'm from Hubbardston. I lived in Templeton for 11 years. And before moving to Phillipston, I'm sure people have heard my story about how I moved to town for the elementary school and then they closed it. It's not 100% true, but it was one of the reasons why we considered Phillipston as part of the community, because my wife fell in love with the school. So here I am. Please, whoever's next, go for it.
I'd like to go. My name is Tom Doust. I've been in the town for 10 years. I live here with my wife, Sarah, and my daughter, Sunny. Sunny is 6. We're currently homeschooling her. My wife had to, I'm getting some feedback here. Is anybody else getting that?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
I'm not, it might be my computer. I don't hear it, so let me.
Okay. So my wife had a small town experience. She lived in Ashby, and she's the one that brought my attention to the school issues. And then I started to see what she was talking about, and I heard all the stories that she had said. So that's why I started to gain an interest in the school. And it's actually become kind of a hot button issue for me. And part of the reason why I put my name in for selectman. I'm hoping to get out of this whole thing, that we can somehow do something with the school, get it open back up, or at least find out where our priorities lie in regards to Templeton, who I think sometimes we have a tendency to demonize, but they're good folks over there. Anyways, talk too much. Next.
Well, I'll throw myself under the bus. I've been in Phillipston for, good 60 years. Been involved in town government probably a good 40 or more years. I was on the previous Phillipston Memorial School committee, which was basically looking at getting the building up to date in terms of certain priorities. And then, of course, they closed the school, so we became kind of moot. I being a teacher for 43 years, my heart is with that school down there. I had 2 kids that went through there. I was involved down there, and it broke my heart to see it close. And I still think that maybe if things were handled a little differently, and I'm saying that personally, I think it might have stayed open in some way, shape, or form. But there was some real caustic things going on that I wasn't happy about. And like you said, the Templeton folks are pretty good. It's not the folks, it's the school committee. And like you said, we should be looking at all options in terms of even pulling out of the district and in some way, shape, or form being involved in that way. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to being on this committee. It's a real nice mix of people, and I think I'm optimistic that something good will come out of it.
I guess I'll go next. Crystal McAllister here. I've lived in Phillipston since 2003. I have 2 kids in the district, a 16-year-old who's a sophomore at the high school, and an 8-year-old who is now currently a 2nd grader at the Templeton School, which obviously had gone to the Phillipston School. Both of my kids went through the Phillipston preschool program. My oldest, unfortunately, wasn't at Phillipston, which, you know, nothing against Phillipston at the time. It was kindergarten was a half-day program back then. And I'm a full-time working parent, and that didn't work for me. So at the time, I ended up putting her in a private Catholic school, and then she transitioned here to Narragansett for middle school. However, my youngest was in Phillipston since day one, and it was a great school, and the staff was awesome. And I still feel that way to this day with the staff members that have transitioned over to Templeton. So I was disappointed when the school closed, obviously, and would like to see it open in some form if possible, because I think it is a benefit to a town to have an elementary school. Even if by the time it happens, my daughter only has 1 or 2 years left, because I know this is a process. But I wanted to be on this committee to help bring my, you know, my opinions, my thoughts, my experiences. And that's about it.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Becky O'Day. I've lived in Phillipston for 34 years. I was the last class to go through the town hall for kindergarten. And 2 years ago, we had the option to move out of town and get lakefront property. And I decided to buy a different home in Phillipston because I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And so I kind of lost that fight with the husband when he said it was a good idea to move lakefront. And I said, stay for the school. And then 2 years later, it got closed. So I really want my kids to go to school in Phillipston. I went from K through 6th grade, and that's the sole purpose that I came back to the town. So I'm really rooting for something, anything to happen. I'd be happy with it.
I guess I can go next. I grew up in Hubbardston too, Rick. And I actually lived in Templeton for 10 years and just moved to Phillipston last year. And actually, the reason we moved to Phillipston was to get closer to like where I grew up in Hubbardston, like a small town feel. And I was really looking forward to having the smaller class sizes. In fact, my son, I have a son who's in 2nd grade and a daughter who's in preschool, and we just had a baby. So I have a lot of interest in this, that going in the right direction, because I want all my kids to have the best education that they can. I'm an educator myself. I actually taught at the middle school here at Narragansett for a year. So I actually, Bobby, I think I had your son for math. So again, like I have a lot of interest in this as an educator, and again, I thought that having the small school was like the best case scenario, and it was really disappointed to see it go, to come here and then see it go. But I also have to say my son was in kindergarten at the Templeton School. His first year, he had an amazing teacher. So I still had good at that school too. So I guess I just want to see us figure out something together so that we can go in the, like, make the best decision, really.
I'll go next, I guess. I'm fairly new to town. I just moved here about 2 years ago. We moved from Southbridge, but me and my husband both grew up in Rhode Island, so we just by chance landed here in Phillipston. I have a 8th grader and a preschooler. And when I first moved here, I noticed that the town was going through issues with the school, and I was kind of shocked that there was like a whole elementary school that was just closing down. And I just felt called to join this committee once I saw that there was an option for it. I really enjoy Phillipston. I think education is really important, and having an 8th grader and a preschooler, I thought now would be a good time to help out the community and get this school back.
Okay, I think that just leaves Linda Ellis as the last committee member. I'm not sure if she's there.
I'm here. I'm listening. I've been here 34 and a half years. And hi, Bobby. And Bobby French worked at Phillipston School when my sons went there, did a fabulous job. And she also got her principal license in that district. So I hope she gets on this committee too. I want that school open. That's why we moved here. I don't have kids in that school anymore, but you're all entitled to have that school here. It's priceless, and it's a perfect situation for all the little kids in this area. And I think it's terrible that they closed it. So I will fight to open it with you guys if you want it open. That's it.
Okay, I think that was everybody. If I missed anyone, speak up now. So as I mentioned before the meeting, and on multiple occasions, Tom Doust and I have had conversations about this, and he's actually the reason why I decided to join the committee. And I'm not sure, my screen looks a little funny, so I'm not sure if he disappeared, but I think that
right here.
he had, oh, thanks, Tom. You had made a list of things that we should probably get done, or at least start to think about in the first meeting. And if you would, it would be great if maybe we could touch on a couple of those.
Sure.
I don't know which one you think is probably the most important, but
Yeah, so there were a couple of things. One of course is maybe trying to set up some type of structure as soon as we can for the committee. Picking a chair. And I think Tom Speck had a good idea of making you the adjunct chair for now. And then
I second that.
Yep. Thank you, Tom. He's really the guy for it because he's got a lot of experience going to meetings. He didn't say it, but he might have said it. He works for AOTV, and he goes to a lot of meetings. He knows how meetings are run, and he's level-headed, and he really knows how to get things done. So structure, I think, would be really important. I think that we should come up with some type of mission or goal statement, what we want to accomplish, and realize, we should try to get that out and get that to the select board as soon as possible, so that they know that we're really interested and we're going to be working towards those goals. I also know that Gerhard, like Rick had said earlier, Richard had said earlier, is going to be on the committee. I think that's going to be a benefit to us because he's been a champion for the school. He's really pushed back on a lot of different things where people were trying to take this away from us. I think that we need to kind of come up and Tom Speck might be able to talk about this, a list of things that need to be done to get that school up to par. From my understanding, we don't have sprinklers in that school. We might need to put a new roof on there. There might need to be other things that need to get accomplished. And in a conversation that I had previously with Rick had mentioned maybe that price is not the price now that it once was because of COVID and other issues. So that's something that we should definitely take a look at. And then the possibility of revenue ideas. Could we get an after-school program where we could get some kids from Phillips in there? Or maybe we have some type of adult education going on there. And then also, we talked about Union 28, and I think that Linda Ellis might be able to talk about that. I don't know if you can, Linda, but when Rick and I were talking, we talked about other communities, and I've had some just passing conversation before I got involved in any stuff in town with some people in Royalston, and they're not happy with their situation with Athol. And I do know that they've been looking to make a move. And I know that Petersham is upset about their situation. And we also know that Warwick, and I know somebody in town, in the town of Warwick, is not happy over there. So there's a number of small towns like us that are going through some of the same growing pains and some of the same issues that we are having. But we just got to try to figure out if our priorities are the same as theirs. And maybe we can do something to kind of like come together and get that school open. But there's a lot to do beforehand. So hopefully that I didn't take up too much time, but those are some of the issues I think that maybe we should take a look at. Rick?
Well, so I will begrudgingly accept.
I
I
think,
told Tom, and I want to make everyone, I want to make everyone aware that this is not my dream position to be the chair of this committee. I do have quite a few things going on, and I would be happy to get us rolling, but I would be looking to hand it off to someone sooner rather than later. I'd be happy to stay on the committee and help out as much as possible, but so like I said, I begrudgingly accept for now. Another important role that we need is a secretary, and what that person would do is take minutes and be responsible for communicating with the town clerk for future meetings and future agenda items. And so I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer or nominate someone like I was nominated, but
well, we
if-
haven't voted on it. So I
Oh.
second Tom's motion that you become the chairman. And now I think the best thing to do would be vote on it or discuss it.
make-
I think you're doing a good
Uh,
job, Richard, of discussing it.
Thank you. So do we need to do a roll call vote because of COVID? We're not in person, so,
Yeah, probably would be best. So
okay. So I will abstain, obviously.
all those in favor signify by aye with your name. Tom Speck, aye.
Ellis, aye.
Dowside.
Crystal McAllister, aye.
O'Day, aye.
Remember, you got to be on the committee to vote. So, I don't want to see Tim Haley voting too here. Well, I guess it's a unanimous.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate your vote of confidence. Thank you.
Well, I agree with Tom. You've been around, you've got a lot of mileage on you in terms of committees and meetings. Personally, I think we should also talk about a clerk. So anybody want to be clerk? Anybody want to,
Could you remind us what the clerk does? Was that the secretary position that I
Yeah, like-
mistakenly labeled it?
like I believe Tom said, we need a secretary. We need somebody that's going to take good notes. And get those notes back in a draft form to the group so that our next meeting, we can read them and say, well, here's a change, there's a change, or it's good the way it is, and vote on it. And once they're official, one of the policies is the notes have to go into Karen because she keeps all notes for all committees. And it's one of those things that if anybody wanted to read notes, they could go in and say, Karen, I'd like, or email her, I'd like a copy of, Finance Committee minutes, notes.
So
And she would,
is that, did I mistakenly call it a secretary? Is it the clerk? Is that the position?
clerk, secretary.
Okay, well, clerk sounds better to me, so. Is there anybody that would like to volunteer for that position?
I see a lot of likely candidates there. Tom is a great one. Crystal, you look very astute.
She does look very astute.
Melissa, you do too. Tom Dowse, I think you are too. And Becky, I see you also. And Carrie, my goodness, you guys are.
Linda's doing a good job of nominating everybody but herself. No.
That's
I
right.
know, holy
It takes
mackerel.
a lot of minutes, a real lot of minutes. And if Bobby was on, I'd be nominating her too.
Well, give me a week. My nomination for being on the committee goes to the select board next Monday night. So if you wanted to have a temporary person tonight, we could revisit that position at the next meeting.
See that, guys?
Can we get something clear? The next selectmen's meeting, which has already been tentatively posted automatically, is the 24th. Unless they're gonna post another meeting for the 22nd.
I must have misspoke. I meant the 24th, Tom.
Oh, that's okay, because it's selectmen do have a tendency to have other meetings. So who's gonna be clerk?
So
I
it sounds
also-
like we just need somebody for one night.
Right.
And then,
Yeah, we can address that at our next meeting.
Crystal, do you have paper there?
I do have paper. I can do the best I can, but I've never been one that took notes for meetings before, so I don't know how thorough I'm going to be, but I can try. And this is recorded, correct? If I had to re-watch it, do I have
It is-
access to
yeah.
that?
it is recorded. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't have immediate access, but I will request it and I will upload it to YouTube and I'll send you the link.
Okay, because
I-
that would definitely be
that
more
case-
helpful, because as things are going, it might be hard for me to keep track who said yes or not, but if I can re-watch it, then I'll have a better chance of writing things down. So I can accept it for this meeting. I don't know that I could commit to a long-term thing, but I could do it for this meeting.
And I'll consider it. Second, yeah. I'll consider it if she doesn't take it.
Well, we could vote on Tom for the next meeting at the same time.
I think Bobby French graciously offered to fill
Yep.
in for us once she's officially on the committee. So if that's still true, I guess I would make a motion that we ask Crystal to be the clerk for tonight and we readdress it once Bobby's on the committee.
I second it.
Sounds good.
I'll abstain because me.
So I think we need a roll call vote for that one as well. So Rick Deegan,
Tom
All those
Dowsett.
in favor?
LSI.
Spec eye. That it?
I think some people are on mute and they don't know it. Tom Dowsett, if you didn't get it.
Raise your hand if you said aye.
Melissa Carello, aye.
I think we're missing one vote, but she possibly may have stepped away. So the majority of the committee has already voted, so that's probably enough, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Who are you missing?
Carrie?
that's
I didn't see her vote.
Did you say Carrie?
She's, oh, there you are. Yep.
I just popped in tonight. I don't know if I'm on the committee yet or not, or if I'm on the committee at all.
You would have received an email from the town clerk. Were you on that list? I thought you maybe were.
I wasn't, I saw it on Facebook and I was very interested in
Ah,
coming and wanted
I
to
see.
be on the
I'm sorry.
committee, but sorry.
Okay, I apologize. I thought you already were. I apologize. So I guess we're all set and we can move on with that. So it looks like it passed unanimously. So the next thing we should probably talk about, Tom Speck, you have your hand up. Was that just a vote? You have your hand up, Tom? Was that just to signify your vote? Yeah, you're unmuted. Or you're muted, I should say. All right, so we can move on to discussing, I think this next thing you said, Tom Doust, was goals or a mission statement. Oh,
I think
he is
Tom
waving his
Speck's trying
hand.
to get your attention. He
Yeah, I
can't
see him
unmute.
now.
Hit
I can't see
Alt-A.
anybody all at once. Can I unmute? I don't think I can unmute. I can only ask you to unmute. I can lower your hand and I can, where did he go?
All right. Well, I
Hold on
wasn't
one
getting
second.
the
There
message
he is.
I'm used to. Before we go into goals, which I think are awesome and a good idea and set priorities, but I think we should look at a meeting night and how often we meet. As in terms of past experience, I think we should look at Tuesday nights. And the only Tuesday night that we can't meet is the second Tuesday of the month. And that's traditionally for the Zoning Board of Appeals night. And I would recommend
I
Tuesday.
am not available. Yeah, I am not available for Tuesday night. I'm not. Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursday nights are no good for me. They're generally work nights. As you said, I do a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I'm just thinking,
Um,
you know, I'd hate to call a meeting and then have the selectmen last minute have a meeting. Because my,
I understand.
you know, my thing is I'll be at the selectmen's meeting and maybe some other people here and I mean, I suppose we could always cancel a meeting, but
Yeah, my inclination would be to keep it on Wednesday. That's why this meeting is on Wednesday, because I'm the one that got all the names together and just
Yeah.
scheduled it. Generally, Wednesday nights are free for me, but not always. But Tuesdays, Mondays, and Thursdays are almost never free.
How often do you anticipate the committee meeting?
I
was my
would
next
think we
question.
should meet, I think we should probably meet maybe twice a month if we can. It would be a good flow to get things moving. Linda has her hand up. Linda, please go ahead.
The selectmen are, well, supposedly meeting every other weekend, every other Wednesday.
Mhm.
And I know with budget season right now that they've been invited to work with the FinCom. So hopefully they keep on every other. So if we could do it on the Wednesdays that they have off, that would probably be good,
Mhm.
unless you could move it to 6. And I don't know if
I-
anybody's on the committees at that time.
Yeah, no, I'm commuting at 6 o'clock, so
Yeah. I know you're busy.
I mean, you know, like
Maybe every other.
I think
I
every
think
other
that makes
Wednesday
sense
would
to-
work.
yeah, so we could just schedule opposite of the selectmen if that's okay with everybody. I mean, everybody's here tonight. It's a Wednesday. Is that seem to work for everybody else?
Well, I think we should also consider as part of every other Wednesday that the selectmen don't meet, the fact that if the selectmen do have an off Wednesday meeting, that maybe we should cancel and you know, move it to our next scheduled meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. We could probably deal with those situations as they arise. I don't think that's
Right.
unreasonable.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And while we're talking about in the meeting,
So do we need to?
I-
So we would meet, the next meeting date. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Hold on a second.
31st.
Thank you. So, do we need to vote on the next meeting or vote on a meeting schedule, or can we just agree to it? Or how formal does that need to be? I'm not aware of that.
I think we should vote on it.
Okay. I'd make a motion that we meet next, not next Wednesday, in 2 Wednesdays from now on March 31st at 7 PM.
Second,
Spec eye.
Ellis, I.
Crystal,
Doust,
aye.
Melissa,
Egon,
I.
aye. I think that's everybody. Okay, so our next meeting
Before we
is,
go further, I think we should
Yes.
also talk about, the Finance Committee has their own Zoom address. And it's not against the
Okay.
law. We did extensive investigation. And it might be better for us to have our own Zoom address.
Okay.
Just in case there is an emergency selectmen's meeting or something, so we wouldn't be borrowing the towns. So that, I think that would be important for us to have our own.
Is there an additional cost to the town for that?
Linda, you would know. Linda? Well, Tim Haley would know.
They're free.
Are
It's just a Zoom. It's a free
Okay.
one.
And would I communicate with Kevin to get that set up?
No, Tim Haley's a very good option for that. Right, Tim?
Great.
Yeah, Tim Haley is our Zoom person. And he also did investigation with Linda. And I don't believe there's any charge to it.
Tom Dowse, please go ahead.
yeah, I'd be glad to take on that role of Zoom commander if that's the case. I don't think that we're gonna have a problem trying to find Zoom. Everybody has access to Zoom. It's a free app. I think the benefit of going through the town is that the town people that are working there are gonna have access to this information. And because of the open meeting laws, we want to make sure that they have access to everything that we're doing. And so that's why I think we've been trying to go through that avenue, but I'll be glad to set that up. It's not that difficult.
The other thing in my understanding is the free Zooms are limited to the amount of attendees as well as time limits. As far as my understanding, the free Zoom has limits.
That was my understanding too, and that's why I asked for the town's account. I didn't know if we could have a sub account within the town's account. I thought that's what we meant.
Again, I'll look into that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, so we have a meeting, we have some board roles, and it'd be great if no one has any further comments. I'm looking just for hands here. If we could move on to, which one do we want to tackle first? Do we want to tackle goals or mission statement? I did a search on Google while we were talking about mission statements and how to create them. We want it to be short. Don't write an essay. Don't think long-term. Don't make it too limiting. And the other one has something to do with employees, which we don't have. So it might be good to just write down thoughts and ideas or words that are that it might express how we feel or what we're trying to accomplish. Linda, your hand's up, please. Go ahead.
You know, our term is for now just till June 30th, right? Does everybody know that?
You mean as members on this committee?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah. So just be aware of that when you're thinking about a mission.
So what happens on June 30th?
That's a good question.
What is there a reason why that is the defining line, or?
No,
Fiscal year,
that's always
probably.
kind of strange too.
It probably has to do with
Huh.
fiscal year or something like that. It lines up with a fiscal year.
Okay, does it? I'm not,
That's typically how
Right.
fiscal years work, is usually from the July 1st to July 1st. So the end of June is when it's the end of that fiscal year. So my assumption is it's lining up with fiscal year.
Right, and if the
Okay.
committee is still together and has work to do, you would just get reappointed, started for July 1st.
no, okay, great, thank you, good to know, that we need to do that. Also good to know when thinking about a mission statement, our mission statement is to all get reappointed, right? But like I said, it might be helpful to just throw out words and phrases and thoughts that you would like to see included in a mission statement. And it doesn't have to be, I think, super specific, but just a general idea of what we stand for and what we're looking to do. It sounded like from the introductions that we all have the same interest and intent of having the school open in some capacity in which the town's children can go there and get an education. So maybe something that says that. Anybody have any opening ideas? Again, it doesn't have to be a well-formulated thought at this point, even if just a list of action words, if you will. I mean, I can get the
Hello?
ball rolling. Oh, Tom Douse, please go ahead.
I'm just gonna lower that hand. So there's a ton of stuff online, and obviously we don't have to get this all done tonight. But I mean, we can even kind of start a group email and get some of these things out there. I think that we need to. I think some of the things that had happened in the past is during this whole process, we kind of seem to had made Templeton to some degree the enemy here, and I just want to make sure that we're not doing that in this process. I want to make sure that we let those folks know that we want to work with them. Our priorities, unfortunately, right now are not aligned with theirs. That's one thing. The other thing is I want to make sure that educators know that we're very happy with the job that they're doing. My daughter went to Templeton School last year for preschool, loved every one of those teachers. They did a phenomenal job. This is about having a school here in Phillipston. And I want to make sure in my mind that we kind of communicate that too. And then the other thing is to, I guess, communicate what is our priority for education here in Phillipston. And you have, I guess, Bobby French is an educator, Linda Ellis. I'd love to hear from those guys and other people on the panel. And that's some of my thoughts.
I think that when Dan Sandin initiated this with the town on town floor, I think maybe incorporate what he had said when it was voted in by the townspeople. Maybe put that as your beginning.
Do you happen to know what that was? I mean, we can probably find it from the town clerk.
I
Yeah, we
think
can
Karen
find it.
sent it out to all of us.
Yep.
It was down towards the bottom, if I remember. I'm going to throw, as an educator with probably more experience than most of you, and I say that proudly, it isn't bragging. I think our mission statement should be short and sweet: to investigate the educational use of Phillipston Memorial School. It's broad. And that way, when we set up our goals, and I know Tom's hit on a bunch of them, and I do want to comment in terms of Tom, it's been my experience that other than a close group of the school committee, the people of Templeton have no idea what's going on here. No idea. All of a sudden they wake up one morning and suddenly all the Phillipston kids are over there. Um, and so, maybe one of our goals is to educate the Templeton folks. I know there's a Templeton Phillipston Facebook site, and when we post things, we should also post them there so they know what's going on. And I know there's a bunch of them that don't like the idea that they built a school and we're using it. So that's my idea of a mission statement.
Would you mind just repeating that a little slower? I tried to write it down, but I missed it.
Okay, sorry. Investigate
Okay.
the educational use of Phillipston Memorial School.
Okay,
And
That's
it's
a good
broad
start.
enough that we can list our goals.
separately.
And I'd
What do
like
you have?
to, I'd like to add a goal, and that is, and it might be our first thing to address, and that is to stabilize Phillipston Memorial School. I know there was a pretty hot discussion the other night, Selectmen's meeting, or maybe it was at the Finance Committee about why should we put a roof on it? The two bottom lines that the Phillipston Memorial School Building Committee we're working on was a roof, because it's being held together with Band-Aids, and there's no guarantee of what's going on up there after the guy went up there and fixed some of the holes. And an air transfer system. Now the school has two systems. The town stood up and they paid to replace half of it. And there's still another half that is ancient, very, very ancient. And we were told we can't even get parts for it anymore if it breaks down. So I think air quality under COVID, and I think a roof to preserve what we have should be our first goal. And that's my own personal opinion.
I agree.
well,
You are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Tom Speck, wasn't there, I was on that building committee for a second, then COVID hit, and I don't think they ever met again. If they did, I wasn't informed about it. But wasn't there also discussion of a sprinkler system and moving the cafeteria out of the basement? And I think there was also discussion of something about a loading dock being built. Now, the loading
Well-
dock and the cafeteria in the basement may be null and void at the moment because the school is closed. But what about the sprinkler system?
All right, basically, I made a quick list while we were talking. Roof, air handlers. We were told that if we made renovations to the school, we were told this by an architect that we had hired as a consultant. And he said if we made changes, we had to address a sprinkler system under the new regs. You're right, we were looking at an addition off of the gym and making the gym a multi-use facility. And everybody that we had talked to or came to the meeting said it's workable. So yeah, there was a discussion about adding an addition off of the gym and moving the cafeteria up from, and I'll affectionately say, the cellar. And in doing that move, we had to address sprinklers. We had to update the alarm system. And then, of course, the addition. At the time when COVID hit, the last meeting I can remember, we were somewhere around, well, $3.5 million. And that was being generous to do all those things. My own personal thing right now is let's get the building stabilized in terms of a roof and in terms of the air handlers, because we'd never be able to use that building unless the air handlers were changed. And I know we got brand new ones up there because the town voted an article to put them up and they were done. But you're right. Yeah, we were looking at an addition for the cafeteria. And at the same time, there'd be a loading dock there for, built in somehow into the cafeteria, the new kitchen.
Was there any estimate for just the roof and the air handler system? It seems like
I think the air handlers came in around, I don't know, roughly $75,000, and that's just trying to recollect. Could be more, could be less. And the roof at the time was talking somewhere in the vicinity of $250,000. And they were going to do the roof such that there wouldn't be any puddles up there anymore. And that was one of the problems in terms of the roof.
Like,
And
Couple
it
people
told-
got their hands up. Rick, you're on mute.
sorry, I'm trying to keep the noise down from my side. I think Becky O'Day was first, and then Bobby French. Please go ahead and unmute yourselves.
I had actually looked into the roofing quote. I have a friend that owns a roofing company, and I had asked him to look at the numbers. I remember them just being ridiculously high. And so he did look at those numbers. He does mostly rubber roofs on, like department stores and stuff like that. And he said that you could get a much lower number than that. So if there's a possibility to be able to put in bids, I would like to be able to put a friend's name in to maybe be able to look at that.
Yeah, I definitely think at a number of $250,000, we should certainly re-quote it, and because unfortunately it may have increased since before, but that should definitely be re-quoted. And there is no money available currently, right? These would all be new expenses. Is
Well,
that correct, Tom?
This committee could come forth with an article, and if we could get a high figure, and it could be voted on the town floor in the annual election coming up. And we could also come in with a figure of for the air handlers. And have a special article for that. 2 articles for the school to stabilize the building, even if it costs us $500,000 for the 2. We got to have the building so somebody doesn't walk in there and there's water pouring in on the room, and before you know it, or coming down the wall and damaging things. It's our building. We should take care of it like we do the other buildings in town.
Okay, Bobby French, please go ahead.
Rick, I just wanted some clarification. I know we're talking about a couple different missions and our goals. I'm just wondering if the ultimate goal, first, is to look at bringing our own Phillipston students back into the school, even if that means leaving the district, or are we just looking at an educational purpose to fill the building?
That's a great question.
I made that broad enough so that we could do anything. And it could be the first goal is to bring our kids back, whether it's to join with Royalston, Petersham, et cetera, and create our own grammar school district, or Phillipston just pull out and we fund our own kids over there. I didn't want somebody to come back and say, you're not meeting your mission statement with these goals. Which has happened in the past. But I agree with you, Bobby. I mean, personally, it would be my number one thing is to bring them back.
So I think, if that's one of the things, is trying to find out what those steps would be, what the action items would need to be. My understanding is that we would need to get which goes back to your idea, Tom, of keeping Templeton informed, because I think we would have to open the regional agreement. So finding out what does it mean to open the regional agreement, what needs to happen if we're going to create our own union with schools like Peter, Sam, Warwick, Royalston, who's gonna reach out, you know, I mean, we don't have a lot of time. You know, unless this is a, you know, a year and a half, 2-year endeavor. So I'm just trying to figure it out so we can figure out next steps and things people wanna do.
Well, in terms of the regional agreement, that has been opened. Linda, you can talk on that. You're on the committee. As there's at least 2 people that I know of, Linda Ellis and Gerhart, are representatives from the
Yeah,
town.
can I interrupt, Tom? Tom, who's the chair here, you or Rick Deegan?
I was just speaking.
Okay, because I feel like the chair should be telling people who to speak. And you're getting a lot of airtime here. You got a lot of information, but there are a lot of other people involved in this.
Okay,
I'm the only one here that's been around the block, that's all.
so back to Bobby's question about what the ultimate goal is. In my opinion, my ultimate goal is to have the school open in a capacity in which I can send my children to it, whether that is a part of another district or Templeton standing on its own. I'm not sure how we vocalize that. In regards to the regional agreement, the one that I read, which was the one that's on file with the Department of Education, says that we have to give a year's notice to withdraw from the district. And so even if we started this process tomorrow, we're talking about next year being withdrawn, and that's only if it's approved. I have no knowledge of the rewriting of the regional agreement, but I would invite Linda to speak on that because she has her hand up and whatever else she'd like to say. So Linda, please go ahead.
Okay, for starters, the agreement that we all think is the agreement has never been approved by the commissioner at the Department of Education. I was shocked to learn that at the first meeting that I attended with MASC, and they said it really fast, so people weren't paying attention, but I did. So I said, okay, what is our previous agreement and what does that say? Because maybe it says our kids get to stay right in Phillipston. So I don't have a hands-on copy of that. And I need to find out if it's actually signed also, because if that one isn't signed by DESE, by the commissioner himself, then it would revert to the one before that. And the problem with the one that we all thought was authorized, the commissioner also refused to sign it now. So that's a problem for the superintendent and the school committee, and they don't talk about that at all. So interesting, huh?
So how do we get a copy of what DESE is considering our current regional agreement?
We would need to ask DESE what that is. And
So
because
just on that, I did contact DESE and I spoke with their legal department, and what they sent me was the document that I handed around, 2 years ago. It was never signed by the boards of selectmen, but it did have a signature on it under the commissioner, but it wasn't the current commissioner. Is that the document that you're referring to as the one that we all think is the agreement?
the last year that they have an agreement, all right, that is on the website, that we think is the agreement, is the one that is not signed. So we also have a lawyer that Gerhart and the select board has hired to do some research for us. I don't know what they found yet. So
Okay.
that part is being investigated. But that
All right,
that could be
thank you.
really, really good news for us, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Tom Doust, please go ahead.
I think Linda answered all those questions. So where's that document and paperwork? Obviously, the select board is trying to find this. And just so clarification. I'll be glad to go and talk to anybody. I've got a lot of free time in my hands. If somebody needs us, or if there's some task that needs to be done to talk to another school district, I have no problems going out and doing that type of stuff.
So just speaking for myself and not as a committee member here, I think it's important to understand what the agreement is and what it means for us. But I also don't want to get bogged down in that. There's a committee that's rewriting the agreement. And it's not a war we're going to win tonight or even in the next few meetings. I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but that's just my opinion on that. Please, Crystal.
So as far as I've been following the school committee meetings, not in recent weeks, but definitely during the budget issues and the talk of reopening the agreement. And basically what I've heard been said at the school committee meetings is they have to reopen it. They had no choice, couldn't just be signed off on because there's schools on there that don't exist anymore. The new school has a new name. And there's so many things wrong with it that they just could not re-sign it as it was. So they had to start over anyways. That was kind of it. And so ideally it would be nice to have our in at this moment because it's open, and it's going to be open until they come together and have a final copy ready to submit. I do understand the process is long. With withdrawing or anything on that. But I do agree that on the stabilizing our school is important because it doesn't matter what we do or what we want to do. If that building is not considered safe for students to be in, we're not going to get anybody in there. So the town really needs to make it a priority to get that up to par so that we have a leg to stand on when we say we want our students in that building. And as far as the pricing goes, my guess, I didn't look at numbers and I know nothing about roofing, but I do know that anything in the public sector is prevailing wage. And that automatically kicks it up probably by 20 to 30% all the time. We do see it all the time in floor covering. We can do jobs for thousands and thousands of dollars less, but because it's prevailing wage, we have to charge a higher rate. And that's kind of government run. That has nothing to do with the actual contractors.
That's great information. Thank you for all that. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest with you. It's a lot of new information for me. Does anybody else on the committee have any thoughts on all of that? Okay, so are we in agreement that one of our main goals or first goals should be to stabilize the building, which would include some type of roofing system and repairing or replacing air handlers? Does that sound like what we should label or outlay as our first goals? It's not really. See, the thing I'm concerned about is that we're the education, and I'm just thinking out loud, we're the Education Options Committee. And I think it's important to stabilize the building. I agree with everyone. But is that our charge? And I would invite anyone to give their thoughts on that. Please, Linda.
I wouldn't say it's our predominant charge at the moment. We do know that things need to be fixed there. But there's also a lot of huge initiatives that because of COVID have come up, and a lot of grants that's come down from the federal government that could help update that building that maybe we should go after. And that would be on the town's end through the select board, not our end. And there's grants, just regular grants we could possibly go after, depending upon the building, which part of the building, part of that is older than the other. And quotes would be sent out to a whole bunch of people, not just one. But I know Tom has investigated this a lot with a huge group of people. but just my thoughts.
No, and they were good and welcome. Bobby, please.
And I get what's being said, what you're saying, Rick, about this being, the Education Options Committee. But if we don't have a building for any of those options to go to, it's kind of a moot point, And so for any of those options to happen, we have to have a viable building. And I don't think right now we would get an occupancy permit the way the building is.
Becky, please. And then
So I think just a question as a resident of the town. I do know, speaking with other residents in town, I have heard a couple concerns with it being, is it going to cost us more to try and fund this on our own than it would for us to stay with the Narragansett district? Does anybody know, or is that going to come once everybody figures out, way further down the road?
So I definitely don't have an exact answer on that. My feeling would be, though, is that we are paying into the district now to send our elementary students to Templeton, and that money would be recouped if we brought our students home, as well as state aid would come back from the district to us. But I don't know if there are any concrete numbers out there. If anybody knows, now would be a great time to speak up. Okay, and with that, Crystal, please go ahead.
So to touch a little bit on that, I do agree that it's not necessarily our charge as far as stabilizing the building. And as far as our charge in this particular committee, I think it is our charge to kind of look at our options and maybe try to get some numbers together per se, what our different options would look like. Throw multiple options on the table that we think are feasible, and then look at those numbers. And I think that's kind of what the committee purpose is, to go back with what Becky was saying. How much is it going to cost? Is it going to cost us more to pull out and run it on our own, or to go to another district? I mean, we talked about other ideas. Do we only want to pull out the elementary school kids? Because if we do that, which, in my opinion, having a high schooler, I really don't want them to go to Athol or Winchington or Gardner. I like Narragansett as far as a high school is concerned. So would I want to pull her out of there? No. So that would mean that we would still have some money in Templeton to keep our kids there. So we have to kind of throw the options, I think, on the table. Like what could be the options? Do we split at the elementary and keep them in? Okay, how much is that going to cost us? Do we pull everybody out? What is that going to cost us? And when we pull everybody out and we try to put our kids in the building, the cost to repair the building is a factor of that whole cost to the town. So I think that's kind of what our goal was to do, is to come up with options, and then maybe try to get the research, or at least go to the right people that have some of those figures to try to put them together and say, this is what we found, and present it to the town, and then see what the town wants to do. Because if it does end up costing too much as everybody wants their own elementary school, we only have so many taxpayers in this town, and we can't foot the bill if it's too big. And I think that's kind of what the purpose of this group was, is to try to, what are our options? What's the cost? Can we do it? And I think that was the goal overall.
Linda, please go ahead.
There's many different ways to fund that budget. And if your child does want to go to that school, we could choice them in, or you can tuition in. It depends on how we write it, an agreement with any school district, including Gansett. Maybe we don't do business with them. Maybe we do. Maybe we do business with some other town. I don't know, maybe Royalston wants to build a brand new school and say, yep, that's just for Phillips and Royalston. Who knows, Warwick has done a ton of work on this, and they are working with a retired superintendent. She was the superintendent of Greenfield, and I know she's helping them a lot. So they've done a lot of the legwork, but there's many ways to fund. And Crystal, that is a really good thought. the way you were thinking about the budget, but there's ways to finagle it so that we would make out okay and still send your child to the school you want.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on that? Crystal, your hand is still up. Is it just up?
Oh, sorry.
because- It's
No.
okay. So, the question is regarding goals. It sounds like there's a strong opinion about people in the committee that we think we should stabilize the building as maybe our first goal. My next question would be is how do we go about doing that? And we have a question from Carrie. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going off of what Crystal just said, because I was in total agreement with everything she just said about the school situation. Can you withdraw from the district or can you withdraw the district at elementary level and not pull out from middle, high school even possible? I'm just asking, I have no idea.
My understanding, Linda, thank you. And Bobby, please go ahead.
Yeah,
You can,
Oh,
that's
well,
the situation, like in Peter, Sam, Warwick, they all put out just at the elementary level, but then there's students that had an arrangement with a regional school for middle and high school.
Thank you.
So it sounds like it is possible, and then we could negotiate with Templeton or any middle and high school to send the kids there. I'm sure any school would be glad to have them. I know, being from Hubbardston, I know that Quabbin is looking for more students too. I'm not saying that that's a great option or that's something that we should investigate, but I think there are more than one option out there. Back to the question of stabilizing the building and the goal of doing that. What would be our process there? I mean, it sounds like there's a consensus above the board that the roof needs to be repaired and the air handlers need to be repaired. I certainly agree that water inside the building would be a very costly issue if it's not already coming in. And the air handling system, especially in the days of COVID, would need to be brought up to code. Linda, you mentioned that the grants, which is a great idea that I wasn't even thinking of, that are available now, especially with this latest round of stimulus. Who in the town writes the grants? Who would be responsible for doing that? And how do we have that person start investigating that? Is there someone that does that?
I guess Kevin Flynn has been the grant writer in our town. And I think if we, as a group, wrote a charge to the select board to investigate, maybe they're already doing this, maybe the select board is already looking into this. And maybe they have ideas too, but we could ask if anything's being done, including grants.
So, Tom Dowse, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that I know that a couple of folks that are town administrators, and sometimes they get folks that just come in to actually write grant writers. And sometimes they get a little portion, administrative fee for writing the grants. But I think if, part of the things that we're saying here, like was mentioned earlier, we want to stabilize the building, which is exactly what should be done. But also, as part of the goal, or whatever we ship off to the select board, should also mention that other part that I was just talking about.
So you're right.
So in other words, we should have somebody writing grants or somebody part-time writing grants to get this money.
So it sounds like your recommendation is to write a charge, Linda called it, to the select board from this committee stating that we feel that we should have someone, I don't know if hired is the right word, but to write grants with the intent to stabilize the building? Is that correct? Do I understand you correctly?
Yeah.
So not just say
either-
we want someone, go ahead.
Yeah, either stabilize the building or find funds that would help stabilize the building. Tom Specht had already mentioned before that we should be trying to put something together, his words, for May, for the big town meeting, whether it's $500,000 or not. I mean, if the town's gonna pony up that money, that's great. But if I do think that if we can find some other monies out there, there's $1.9 trillion in this COVID relief bill. I'm guessing there might be something in those monies for local communities, like Massachusetts to Phillipston. Maybe there is something there that we can siphon off and get a hold of.
Well, I think the letter that goes to the selectmen should also highly recommend that the selectmen put 2 articles on the annual town meeting warrant for the air handlers and the roof. And then they would be going out, and I don't know if it's our charge to go out and start getting quotes, et cetera, et cetera. I know a lot of times the people will vote the money and then they start the investigation of trying to find grants that would support the roof. It may not be all of it, but it'd be something in terms of taking the burden off the townsfolk. But I think we should charge the selectmen with writing 2 articles. And at the same time, as it's already been discussed, investigate grants or monies that we could come into to help subsidize those 2 projects.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to make sure I understand completely. Sometimes I'm a little slow with this stuff, so I just want to make sure it's very clear in my mind. So you're saying that we should charge the selectmen with writing 2 articles for the special town meeting, 1 for the air handler and 1 for the roof, and then that the grant writing and investigation would come after that vote?
Well, it could be parallel, but I'm quite sure, I can't imagine anybody putting time in on looking for a grant, although it would help if they had that information at the town meeting, annual town meeting, but I don't know. You got me there, but I think it should be their responsibility to write the articles, not this group.
Crystal, please go ahead.
Kind of have to agree with what Tom is saying. I haven't been to too many town meetings, but kind of starting to see how they run. It almost sounds like it would be better for the articles to be on the town meeting for the townspeople to vote that we want to raise and appropriate money for these repairs. And I don't know if there's a way to put an explanation in there for the future education use of the building. So they know they're not just, the idea is there for educational use. Because if they vote it down, we already know if they vote it down, there's really no hope, because they have to fix the building. And I think that's the main thing. And if for them, the town to actually start investigating real numbers, because again, with COVID, construction in the last year has gone crazy high as far as costs go. So any quotes they've gotten in the past are pretty much null and void at this point. And so they would need to get new quotes, and then perhaps they would put the effort into trying to find the grants to fill that financial need as well. So I do think that's the right step, rather than have somebody try to write grants and then nobody even votes to come up with the rest of the money.
One thing you've got to remember from my past experiences on annual town meetings, we have one strong group here of townsfolk. There's 11 of us and a couple that are missing. Even the people that aren't members of our committee would hear and understand the explanation. And you folks would get up and stand and raise your hand and speak on behalf of the articles. And don't forget, you have a friend with the finance committee, because we have to recommend articles and we're responsible or not recommend or not say anything. And we're responsible to explain why we're recommending something. So, when you look at the townsfolk and their power in terms of this committee, I don't know, I don't want to say, but, we could really, do a bang up job. We could have our chairman stand up and say, the committee voted, support this unanimous or something. It needs to be done first. This is my own opinion. I've seen it happen numerous times, and things get passed, and the townsfolk are better for it.
Okay, thank you for that discussion explanation. So Linda, please go ahead.
The important thing is you got to remember there's certain codes that the schools are requiring that in order to let kids be in, unless we made this private school. Okay, so if you're going to expect public school, it's got to be up to what their standards are. And the townspeople aren't going to know that. So who's going to investigate that? That's an important factor.
I have a couple questions. You just mentioned something that I had been thinking about, and that's the possibility of maybe having a town-run private school. Can you possibly talk or Bobby about what that means and how we might even approach that? It's a little off topic, but you happen to say it, and so now it's stirring in my mind.
I'm just wondering though, if it's town run, if it can be considered private.
Okay.
You
So we
know,
would
that-
have to set up a 501c3 or something.
or something like that is my thinking. I don't know, like with a school like the village school, how that's run. My experience, I was the principal of a Catholic school, so that's different, but it's like part of a diocese sort of thing. So you're still part of a group, but I don't know if a town can run a private school. I think it has to be part of the public school.
Okay. Thank you. So if we can get back on track, we were talking about stabilizing the building and charging the selectmen with writing 2 town meeting articles, one for the roof and one for the air handler system. Immediately what comes to mind for me is what we've already said, that these costs, these estimated costs are out of date now. And how do we go about getting new estimates? Is that a charge? Would that be part of the selectmen's charge once we ask them to do this? Would they then be responsible for going out and getting the quotes? Is that something that we need to do? Does anyone have any information on that? I apologize, my naive questions here. So in other words, if we're going to ask the selectmen to write 2 town meeting warrant articles, in what amount and how do we find out that amount? Linda, please. Thank you.
Yeah, they would definitely need to do quotes. That wouldn't be our charge.
Right. So then the extent of our responsibility would simply to say, this committee believes that the first step in finding options for education in Phillipston would be to stabilize the building and which includes roof and air handler system. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe we're all in agreement of what I just said in some form, maybe not that one. But is that true? Does anybody else have any opinions on that? Anybody from the public have any comments? None. So would the next appropriate thing be to make a motion that this committee charge the Board of Selectmen with adding 2 articles to the town meeting warrant and finding associated cost, or do we even need to say that?
Sounds good.
Thank you. I appreciate all the help because I'm completely lost in the woods when it comes to charging the selectmen to do anything. Usually, I'm going to them and asking for help, so I
So I
appreciate that.
second your motion, Richard.
Thank you. Why don't I do it more officially? I move that this committee write a letter asking the selectmen to add 2 warrants to the town meeting to stabilize the Phillipston Memorial Elementary School, 1 for the roof and 1 to update the air handling system, with the belief that those 2 things are vital for us to use the building in any capacity and need to be taken care of before this committee can move on with its goals. How does that sound?
Second,
Thank you. All those in favor, please?
spec eye.
Ellis, I.
Crystal, I.
All right, Degon, aye. Next question is, how do we actually go about doing that? I would appreciate some input from people who have charged the selectmen with putting something on town meeting warrant. Tom, please go ahead, doused.
No.
No, was that a mistake?
No, my hand was up for the vote.
Okay.
I'm guessing that we have to write up the letter and maybe send it through the clerk's office. That would be my guess. So that it could get to the select board.
Does that sound accurate to everybody?
You got to indicate in the letter that it was a unanimous vote of the members present also.
Okay, good to know.
I mean, in a sense, when you think about it, they are in charge of the buildings. They're in charge of building maintenance. There's accounts there that have been in the past and will be, hopefully, if the folks vote on them, for building maintenance. And so my own personal feeling is they're in charge of getting a roof fixed, as they did with the library just recently from the wind. And so it's their responsibility to come up with these articles. I don't think we need to do an official petition and get 10 signatures or anything like that to have them
Okay.
put on. It's their job to fix the building.
So basically, your feeling is we just notify the selectmen of our discussion and decision and in writing
Yeah,
before their
with the
next
uni-
meeting
And
and let them
indicate,
run with it.
and indicate that it was a unanimous vote.
Okay. All right. Anybody care to take on the writing of that letter? Anyone? Tom Stout, thank you. Man of the hour. That would be fantastic. And should that letter include our intent to find someone to also pursue grants for this? Or would that be a separate letter or a PS or something like that?
I think that we should let them do their job, and if they feel like they want to get grants, then they can do the grant thing. If they don't think they're going to do like a debt exclusion or some type, then they can do it that way. I think we should leave it up to them how they're going to get the money and where.
Okay, anyone else on grant writing and whatnot? I mean, I kind of like the idea of bringing in somebody who gets a little piece of the pie for finding and writing the grant. They may be more enticed to do more research. Linda first, please.
That's standard practice for anybody that writes a grant. No matter who they are, they have the right to take a percentage.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Thank you. That's helpful. Tom, please.
Yeah, while we were talking about it, obviously, not putting the cart in front of the horse, this here is to get that school stabilized, but there are going to be other things that school is gonna need. We know that there is money out there, so however we phrase it or explain it, we should be trying to look for other monies, or at least suggest to the select board that they should be looking at that option, and not coming up with ideas like bulldozing the building because it's too far gone already. We want them to look at every option possible, maybe not right now, but down the line or somewhere in the process of what we're doing, before the May meeting, perhaps come up with something else.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I don't have any issue adding into the letter that we think it would be a good idea to pursue some of these grants that are available now, especially for the air handler. I mean, that I think is a no-brainer. I think that there should be something out there for that to do due to COVID-19 that we should be able to get to offset that charge for sure. The roof, I don't know. I've never dealt with grants and stuff like that. But personally, as one member of the committee, I don't have any issue, and I think it's a good idea to add in that we feel that not only should these things be added, but that grants should be pursued to cover the cost or offset the cost. Anybody else on the committee have any opinions on that?
Well, sounds good.
Okay, so we moved and voted that, and Mr. Doust has graciously offered to type up that letter. We have to be careful with emails when emailing each other. How do we want to see that letter, and maybe can we vote via email so that way we can get this to the selectmen for their next meeting without us having to meet again? Is that a possibility?
I'm not voting anything in email. No way.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
It's been the finance committees and the zoning board of appeals committees thing that when you send something out, you put right up in the top, please do not respond to this email in possible violation to open meeting laws. And, and then everybody on the committee, don't respond to it.
Right.
How
So,
I have a lot of trust in Tom. And I'm quite sure he's going to come up with a bang up letter. We already have a motion. He probably will do a little maybe paragraph explanation. I don't know how he'll do it, but I'm quite sure he'll do a good job. And so I don't know. I personally would say yes right now on the letter. Just get it out, get it to the selectmen. We all pretty much know how it's going to go. I suppose you could pass it by us folks, but then our next meeting isn't until the 31st.
the 30th. Yeah, 31st. That's what I was thinking, is it's going to be beyond their meeting, and then we'll be beyond their meeting, and then it'll be to their next meeting, and then we're
Right.
talking about, mid-April. I'm certainly okay with Tom putting together a letter. I just wanted to get a feel for everybody else. How does everyone feel about just putting our trust in Tom to deliver an appropriate letter of our intent to the Board of Selectmen? Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Anybody have any objections to that? Let's put it that way. How about that? Is that something we should vote on, or just that we already voted on it, right? So we're all set with that.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right, Mr. Doust, thank you very much for falling on the sword for that one. And we trust that you will relay the message of this committee to the select board. So, I mean, that pretty much wraps up the list of things that we had to talk about. It is 8:30. We've been at this for an hour and a half. Is there more to discuss at this point, or do we feel like we've accomplished enough for the first meeting? I don't want to be the one to call it if someone else has other issues. Linda, please.
I've been advocating for almost a year now to get internet in there because I know that there are parents that don't have internet access. and they wanted it so that they could do homework with their kids. And I know there was some teachers that were willing to do some extra support in cars, like by a car drive-through type of thing, if there was internet over there. And there was supposed to be, and we mentioned it again just recently. So I'm still rattling that cage till it's done. So I just wanted people to know, because I know people are out there without internet access and their kids are suffering because of it.
And the other thing that what Linda's talking about is Wi-Fi, because you can sit outside the building and access the Wi-Fi / internet. And, you know, parents, or like Linda said, there are people that are willing to go there, work.
Okay, Tom Dowse, please.
Yeah, I know in Fitchburg, we had a number of places that people could go and they would call them hotspots. The police department would have it. Town hall has it. And then, you know, of course, you can get that stuff from sometimes even McDonald's and places like that. So I think that's important too. Is that something, I don't think we should add that to the letter, but maybe address it the next meeting, Linda? Is that what you're saying?
I've been addressing, so maybe that would be good if we don't do it soon.
Are you saying to put it in the letter, Linda?
No, I
Okay.
we've been talking about it, but I think one little thing at a time might be helpful.
So my understanding was from watching one of the most recent selectmen meetings that there was somebody who's now holding a town office in there. Is that person doing so without internet?
Yes.
He doesn't have anything. He doesn't have a phone, no internet. And what else didn't he have, Tom?
I think that about covers it. I'm not sure even in terms of the alarms. Yeah, he's in there without anything. And even I addressed that at one of the selectmen's meetings, you know, when are we gonna power all that stuff up? And, well, in fact, I addressed it at the last meeting or at our finance committee meeting, and it was on the agenda, the fact that the monies that the town folks had voted to get a generator up and running for that building in case of an emergency, it still hasn't been done. So COVID or not, it should have been first priority once we went into a state of emergency a year ago with COVID, but other things take precedence, and maybe even now we can get monies from the feds or the state to pay for that. You know, I hate this, personally feel this, but you know, the building's sliding, and you know, they should be reacting right away, just like they'd react for the annex, just like they reacted for the well that sprung a leak, reacted for fixing the roof on the library because shingles blew off. And it just seems now that we're not using the building, it's sort of just going by the wayside. And I really think this committee has an opportunity to maybe get people to move. It's my own opinion.
Tom Dowse, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with what Tom Speck had to say there, and we definitely should, as a group of people, if you get a chance, I get a little hot under the collar sometimes because that's just who I am. But if you get a chance to go to some of these meetings and show your face and voice what Tom Speck is saying, I think that's important. Or if you can't do a meeting, maybe even rip off an email to people. Because the more they hear from us, the more they're going to give us attention. The old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But I want to touch on something I think it was Linda had said about how maybe we should start investigating whether we're going to withdraw from the district or whether we are or not. We're still trying to find that out. But then maybe we could all kind of take a look for the next meeting. What do we want to do in regards to having our kids get back in that school? I personally think joining up with Royalston, Petersham, and Warwick would be a great idea. There are a lot of people out there right now in the state that want regionalization to happen. And regionalization is like this catchphrase that so many communities are using. And I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, but maybe we should be thinking about that for the next meeting.
I agree
Thank you.
with Tom, and I think that a nice way to handle
I'm
our
sorry,
goal-
I'm sorry, Tom. Crystal had her hand up just before you, if she
Sorry.
could go. Thank you.
No,
Go ahead,
it's fine.
Crystal.
I was just going to agree, with Tom Doust that I think for the next meeting, I think our focus should be talking about our actual options, what to do with the school and about getting our kids in it and actually kind of list off different ideas of ways of doing it, whether the town runs it, and talk about those ideas, or going with another union of elementary schools and talk about those ideas, because I think that's what they wanted this committee about, so that we could get the ball rolling and have some discussions about the options really to get the school open, and then maybe do the legwork or try to figure out how to get those ideas together to go over to figure out which may overall be the best one, or at least have a few ideas to present to the townspeople to figure out overall. And another thing I would like to discuss at some point, or whether or not we should do it, is another survey. I know a survey went out a couple of years ago of what we should do, but that was back before people thought this was real. I think too many people in Templeton and Phillipston said they'll never close the school. They just won't do it. They've talked about this for years and they're not going to do it. And guess what? They did it. And now that it's real, I think people will have different opinions on it. But we need to figure out, well, how many kids are going to come back? I know a lot of people turned to homeschooling. Some did homeschooling because of COVID, but some did homeschooling because they didn't want them in Templeton. Are they going to come back? How many students will we actually have in Phillipston? I mean, do we, a survey of how many children are actually in Phillipston and how many would attend the school? I think before it closed, we were looking at numbers in the 60s of just 60s or 70 of Phillipston students on their own. And then there was a handful of Templeton students, and then there was another handful of maybe school choiced in. So, I mean, we got to figure out how many kids are we actually talking about putting in that building. And I think that's where a survey might be helpful to figure out, how many kids would come back to the elementary school if it were to open. How many townspeople want to see it open as a school, and just come up with some options on the table for even a survey for the townspeople to see which direction we should be going in.
Okay, I started making a list of agenda items. We can talk about that in a second. Tom, Speck, please, and then Linda.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with Tom in terms of that being our next goal. And it seems like it might be nice for us to come up with goals as we go on. Each goal is going to take quite a bit of discussion. The other thing that just came to mind while I was waiting was we've been charged to do this. And with our mission statement, I don't see any reason why, like we did with the building committee, this group can't send letters to Petersham, Royalston, so on and so forth, in terms of this, we want to open a discussion about coming up with a district and get some ideas from them. See if they're interested. We bring them up. We can send letters. We're charged to do something, and to do that, we've got to write letters and we got to gather information, et cetera, et cetera. But I also agree with Crystal, maybe it is time for another survey.
Okay, so I want to touch on that 1 second. Linda, did you want to speak? I see you took your hand down, but.
Oh, yeah. A survey's good. The last I could figure of real students that could be going to that school that were not, it was around 200 plus. But a lot of the kids have withdrawn from the schooling, are now doing homeschool, which means no monies are going to that district. So as October 1st, the count for the kids went down for the communities that homeschooled. So their monies in that budget are going to be drastically reduced, which is going to upset that school committee and superintendent, but it also should open their eyes to know that the people were very upset when they closed that school. They didn't want them all together. So that
Right.
could be to our advantage, but how are you going to send a survey out to these people? Do you even know the people that have kids here?
That's a good question. So Crystal, you have your hand up still or again?
I keep
Okay,
forgetting. to do
so
that, but
just to go back, so for future agenda for the next meeting, I have two articles so far, 2 items. Discuss education options available to us and a potential town survey. We all in agreement on that so far? I think so. If anybody disagrees, please speak up. Yeah. And then I lost my train of thought, but on what Tom Speck was saying, as far as Petersham goes, I personally had communication with a school committee member from Petersham 2 years ago when this all started. And at the time, they had quite a bit of interest in speaking with our Board of Selectmen. And for whatever reason, that information was relayed to the town hall and that connection was never made. I'd be happy to reach out to that person again. I don't know if she's even still on the committee, but she could certainly point us in the right direction. So I'd be happy to reach out to Petersham and kind of get that conversation going again. And then Tom has his hand up, but I think Tom has connections in Royalston. Is that right?
Me?
No, Tom Speck. I'm sorry, Tom Speck has his hand up. I'm sorry. 2 Toms. You guys are killing me. You could at least spell it different, you know? So Tom Speck, please
what-
go ahead.
Which one?
Tom Speck, please.
All right,
Yes.
you forget that we have a lot more ways to get out to the public. First of all, we can get out to the public with the newsletter. That's always been a good vehicle. We could set up a Survey Monkey address in the newsletter to do the survey for us. And we could do the same on Phillipston Uncensored, and we could do the same on the Phillipston Templeton site. And like I said earlier, I said, I really think that the people of Templeton needs to be educated as to what's going on, because they haven't a clue. They haven't a clue. You know, all of a sudden their class sizes went up tremendously, and it's like, huh, why? Well, what? Phillipston school's closed? So I think we have a lot of options in terms of getting a survey out, and we may get a lot better response than we have in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's something, we could probably maybe hit the newsletter for the end of May, because I know Tim needs some time to get information in. That's just my thought, but boy, we have a lot more things that accessible to get surveys done than we had 2 years ago.
All right, absolutely. Tom Douse, please.
I'm playing microphone games here too. So I like what Tom Speck had to say, because we do have to educate Templeton. And, we haven't even tapped into the newspaper yet. We got Greg Vine, who's always looking to put stories out there. So we can tap into that at some point too. But Linda Ellis brought up, I think, a good point, like, do we even know how many kids there are in town? How many kids would go to town? And it kind of begs the question, like, now, how do we get that information from Templeton? Because it's really our district too. And are they going to give us that information freely, And it's surprising to me that our town has to get a lawyer to get this information that we should probably readily already have. I don't know if somebody else can speak to that, but that seems very startling to me.
Anyone care to comment?
I would
I don't
think.
see
that
anybody.
I think
Oh,
the
go
town
ahead.
clerk would be a good place to start. I mean, we do all have to send out census to the town of who lives here, and we have to state whether or not we have children. So I would imagine they do have some rough numbers of how many children live in town, and probably have access to a mailing list for every resident in town. So I think that would be a place to check with, as far as trying to reach out to the members of the town and figure out, do you have students here? Would you send them to Phillipston School if it were open? Even though bypassing the school district, I would imagine the town has to know those numbers as well, at least who's living in town.
Right. We could certainly send an email out to the town. Linda, please go ahead.
The school knows exactly what the stats are for the schools, and you could do a public records request.
Okay, that's a good idea. So, I mean, I'd be happy to send an email out to our community to try and get information from the surveys. I think that's, I meant from the census. I think that's a great idea. Tom Doust, please go ahead.
Yeah, Linda, I just talking to you directly. Is there somebody in particular that we can talk to over there at the school to get this information? It seems kind of convoluted that we got to hire a lawyer to get information about this. And then Rick has talked to me in the past. This is way before we even started talking about this committee. He's been trying to get a hold of that survey that they took, and he hasn't been able to get his hands on that. Who
Rick
can we talk
Moulton?
to get this information?
Are you talking about Rick Moulton? Or Rick who?
No, Rick Deegan.
Oh, okay.
Rick-
Yeah, I was interested in getting a copy of the survey only because I knew it was overwhelming that the people in town wanted to have the school open, wanted to have their kids educated in Phillipston, but I didn't remember the exact numbers, and that's what I was looking for. But yeah, I requested it but never received it. Tom Speck, please go ahead.
There's one person who maybe could get us the information and you wouldn't have to go through too many channels, and that's Sue Varney. And if you made the request of Sue, historically, Sue used to live in Phillipston. Historically, Sue used to be the CAO, which was a part-time job when she did it. And I know there's been other people that have requested from her information, and she's provided it. And she is the superintendent's, I guess you call her his secretary, but Sue has been very good. And if you just explain to her in the letter that this is a new committee and we're looking for some data, I'm quite sure she'd be more than happy to get it to us in a timely manner.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom. No. So anybody care to send an email to Sue Varney regarding the amount of Phillipston students that are here or that are even available to us? I'm not sure how to word that. I have on my list of things to do to email Peter, Sam, and the town about the census, and also take care of the posting of the next meeting and the agenda so far, the agenda items. Tom Doust, please go ahead.
I'll do that. I'll try to find an email for her and try to get those numbers.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
I'll do the letter that we discussed, and I'll get that email out.
Okay. So just to recap, we set some roles for the board. We are going to send a letter to the Board of Selectmen to talk about stabilizing the building and getting articles on the next town meeting warrant for the roof and the air handling system, with intent that we should be looking for, I'm at a loss for the word at the moment, grants to help us cover those funds. We have 2 agenda items for the next meeting, which has been set for the 31st. Agenda item is one is to actually discuss education options available to us. And number two would be to discuss the possibility of a town survey. Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up tonight? Is there anything else that we should add to the next agenda that I don't have? We can say old business so that we can talk about whatever we want as well. Sound
Well,
good?
we have a list of old business, which you just mentioned, and we have a list of new business.
Yep. So I can write it up that way, you know. Continue discussion. Linda, please go ahead.
Hopefully Gerhard can come to the next meeting too, because maybe he can give us an update on what the lawyer has said.
That's a
And
great
then-
idea. And I will, like I said, request this copy of the recording and get it up on YouTube and send it to everyone so that they can see what we discussed. And hopefully that'll add a lot of context and avoid questions. Anything else from anybody tonight, or do we think we accomplished enough? I am emotionally exhausted. Nothing else? So I would move that we adjourn this meeting and we reconvene on the 31st at 7 PM.
I
Second,
second.
All those in favor?
Spec, aye.
Deegan, aye.
Everything.
Doused eye.
Crystal, aye.
Melissa, I.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time tonight. I think this was, I think it was good and productive, and we will go from here. I look forward to seeing you all again on the 31st. If anybody needs me for anything, please feel free to email me or call.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.